Welcome to the responsive part of this chapter. This one we're going to go really quickly through it because we are soon going to start building out the first project. So that's going to be exciting. So I want to show you a few things that you need to consider and that you need to learn before we get going with that. So first of all, I want to show you something called a media query. And what a media query allows us to do is pretty much use different kinds of CSS when it comes to different sizes of the screen. So I'm going to show you something very simple. I'm just going to throw in a heading here that's going to say desktop. And I'm gonna do one called tablet and one mobile. Okay, so let's do tablet here and then mobile here. Perfect. Hit save, and this is what we have. We can go here in the CSS. I just have the basic margin and padding removal and font size that we did so far. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab them and I'm gonna add a bit of a bigger font size, 2.8 rem. Actually, let's do bigger. So maybe on desktop, I want 4.8 like that. And let's also add some classes to this. So class, I'm gonna name this desktop. All right, and then I'm gonna name this class. And this is gonna be tablet and class mobile. Save. So I want to show you something. I'm also going to add a background color to everything here. So let's just grab let's do the body, and we are going to drop a background of light gray. Hit save, and that is what we have. Okay, so when we go down all the way here, we can add something called a media, and we can write that by adding a round media. Okay, and here what we do is we add some parentheses and we say max width like this, and then colon, and let's do 300 pixels. And I'm going to explain what this does, but just follow along a bit. And we're going to grab the body again, yeah, and we're going to change the background color to something else. Background, let's do light steel blue. I'm actually going to change this to a very bright blue. And you know what? Let me actually increase the size of this. Let's do something like 600 pixels. So as you can see, it changes to blue. And what this basically means is max width basically tells us, hey, the maximum width should be 600 pixels. As soon as it gets bigger than 600 pixels, apply the following styles. Okay, that's what the media tag does. This code here kicks in as soon as the max width gets larger than 600 pixels. So if we take a look here, we can actually hit this button here, the toggle device toolbar, and we can select different kind of sizes of phones. So I can do a Pixel or an iPhone, and as you can see, the width is going to be 320, 600, never mind, 360, 75, iPhone 375. Okay, so as soon as it's in that range of below 600, it's gonna take shape of this. So for mobile, we can actually lower this to something around 400-ish, 500 can be good for a mobile view. So let's do 500 pixels. Okay, so now all the styles that we have here only apply to a mobile view. So if we go here, we can also select that mobile, and we can change that if we want. So we can do mobile like this. We select the class and we can change the font size to something like 2.4 rem and hit save. And let's take a look. Now this is way smaller. So maybe on mobile we want our text to be smaller, but if we don't have that media query, as you can see, it's gonna stay the same. So what we do is, let me close this. Let's see. All right, so as you can see, everything is big, but as soon as we hit that point, it gets way smaller. Okay, now we can do that on the tablet as well. So we can kind of take a look at the size of a tablet, which is around 768 pixels. That's going to be fine. So everything larger than that. So what we can do is we can hit that point again. So we have max width is going to be 500, and then we can do media. Max width is going to be 768 pixels. So when it hits this point, then we can do body, background, and let's change it to something else. Lime green. Hit save. Let's take a look what happens now. So as soon as it gets bigger, it's gonna go green. All right, there we go. And as soon as it gets bigger than this, it's gonna go to desktop. Okay. Now the problem here is that there's not much space for the desktop and the mobile one here, as you can see. So basically everything between 500 and 700 is gonna be the tablet. So this kind of doesn't go for that long here. That's 700. So there's between the mobile and the tablet one, there's not that much, as you can see. So it kind of switches to desktop quite soon, and we might have tablets that are larger. So let's change this to something like 1024 pixels and hit save. Okay, let's take a look what happens now. Okay, so now it's kind of stuck. There we go. Make it larger a bit. We are on tablet mode now, and now we are on desktop. So you can also do the opposite of this by just adding minimum width if that's what you're going for. But there we go, take a look. Now we can add different styles. So even on this one, we can change the tablet, maybe, tablet, and we can add a font size of somewhere in between 3.4 rem. Okay, so when we go here, mobile is small. All right, and now the tablet one is selected, and now the desktop one. So as you can see, we can toggle between those if we want. Okay, so this is one that we are gonna use a lot. These are called media queries. And another great way we can use this is by adding it here into our HTML. Now you're also gonna see that some people might use it like this: media, screen, and max width. And this is gonna work the same way. Nothing's really gonna happen. Is because there's multiple types of media queries. There's also one for print, and there's another one, I believe, for voice or something like that. But generally, we want to do it for screens. And if you leave this off, by default, it's going to be all anyways. So I would recommend you to do it like this. It's fine. It's not going to change a thing. Okay, so let's see how we can add this to our index.html. So rather than doing all of these, what we can do is actually separate these into their own CSS files. And that way, everything is going to be way clearer here. All right, we're not going to flood everything with all of our code. So what we can do is have one style.css, which is a normal one. We can have one for mobile.css, and we can also have one for tablet.css. Okay. And here you would just add these styles normally. So let me just copy over, let's do the mobile one. So I'm going to copy this and add it to the mobile one. All right, we're going to remove this, and this one too, we're going to copy it over to the tablet one. All right, we're also going to remove this. All right, so we just copied over these settings here and here. Start linking it. If we go back here, and if we add it up here, I'll just say link, and I'll say style sheet, and the href is going to be mobile this time. And basically what I want to do is add a media here. So if I say media, and I can add that screen and if I want, but I can just do parentheses and say max width 500 pixels. So anything that is below this 500 pixels, this mobile CSS is going to apply. So let me save this and let's see what's happening. So let's go back here. Let me close this. And as you can see, that gets small. However, the background is not changing anymore. And that's because this style below it is overriding it. So this down here. So what we want to do is we always want to start off with the desktop up here first, and then we are going to go down. So we're going to have desktop, tablet, and then the mobile one. Okay, so let's head back here, and now as you can see, everything works the way we want. If we go back here, it's gonna switch to the desktop. So let's also add the tablet in between here. So we're gonna say link, I'm gonna say style sheet, and here I'm gonna say tablet, and I'm just gonna copy over this media query and change the size of it. So let's go back here, And I can change this to 1024 pixels. Okay, hit save. Let's take a look. Does that work? Okay, so this is the phone. This is the tablet view. And now we are on desktop. Okay, so that's a simple step to media queries. We're gonna apply this to everything that we need. And let's move on to heights and viewport widths, because that's gonna make our life super, super easy. Okay, I have removed everything on the website here, and we are gonna take a look at VH and VW, which are gonna be super awesome. They're gonna help us a ton with building responsive websites. So we have a why am I making weird noises? Oh, websites. Okay. So what I have here is just a H2 with a div. I'm actually going to throw this inside a div. So H2 and a P inside a div. Hit save. Sometimes we want to make sure that we want to just have a page here that takes up the whole space of the screen. So you notice that when we add a div here and we add a height of 100%, let's also add a background color to this. So I might add a background of shaded blue. Okay, hit save, and it just takes up the size of the content, right? Because our body is just the size of the content. So there we go. So this doesn't work. So we saw that we can hack that and add a HTML and body and give that a height of 100%. But then again, this is kind of relative to whatever our parent is, which is the body. So if I change this to 50%, then there we go. So rather than doing that, what we can do is we can use something, we can delete everything here. We can use VH. So I'm gonna add a height of 100 VH and hit save. And this is gonna take up the whole space available here on the screen. So it's the viewport height. And the cool thing is we can also change the size of this like this, and this is gonna adapt automatically for us. So even if I add outside of this div a H1 and it's gonna say hello, look at that. If I scroll, boom, it's exactly 100. So as soon as I start scrolling, we can start seeing the text. And even if I resize this to something like this, smaller, if I start scrolling, boom, we immediately start to see the text. So that's super, super cool. And this height is gonna help us a ton. Now, let me show you something else. If I add, we can also select div H1 here. So I can select the H1 in here. Let's actually increase the font size of everything. So let's just add a font size here of 2.4 rem. Okay, so we can see this a bit easier. Okay, super. So check this out. I can even add a height on this. So height 50 VH. All right, and that should increase it. It's not because I use a H2, so let's do that. As you can see, I can also add a height here. And this is not relative to this 100 VH here. I can use whatever I want. I can do 20, 30, and if I change this to something like 50, as you can see, if I add 50 here, it actually drops out the rest of the content. So it's not dependent on the parent element. Now this kind of breaks our code, unfortunately. What if I want this to also be responsive? So as you can see, as soon as it leaves that parent height, it doesn't really care about it. But what if I want this to be fluid? Just in case we have a ton of content in here and this overflows, all right? So we can also use min height here. So if I add a min dash height, this is gonna adapt automatically. So it's gonna be like, oh, okay, so if your children have bigger heights, it's okay, I'm gonna adapt to it. I'm gonna become larger automatically because I had this min height. So if I add something like 80, as you can see, this div is automatically gonna stretch on its own. So this is very powerful. All we need is min height, and we can create whatever design we want. Okay, there's also another one which is called VW. So I'm gonna get rid of everything here. I'm gonna keep this to, let's keep it like 50, that's fine. If we mess around with width, and I'll add 50%, okay, well, we can see how that works, 80%. But take a look at this. If I grab the H2 again, div H2, and I add a background of light gray to it. Actually, let's make it something brighter. There we go. So you can see that. If I add a width to this, This again is going to be relative to the parent. So it's actually going to be 50% of the size of the parent element, which is this box. Okay, and 100% is actually going to be the size of the whole thing, all right? But it's not going to be the size of the viewport. So we have another property that kind of works the same way as VH, but for width, and that is VW. So as you can see, if I had 100 VW, this actually stretches to the whole available space on the screen, okay? It doesn't care about the parent. So if I add 50, this is going to be the size of this, but I can mess around freely with this and I don't have to worry about in which container does it belong to, okay? Now the cool thing that we can do with this one is actually create some responsive text. So the way we can do that is, well, we saw that we could do it with media queries, and that's true. So let me remove the width here. All right, and let's change this back. So let's get rid of this as well. Let's get rid of the background colors here like this. And this one as well, just clearing some things up here. Okay, so take a look at this. We can technically do a media, and then we can do a max width of 7, let's do 500 pixels, okay? Like this. And then here, let's also add a background of a light color so we can see this. Background, did we mess something up? Let's see, light blue, because I'm not getting any autocomplete. So let's see here. Okay, so we need to actually add this to the body. So body, like that, okay? So let's see if this works. If we get to a smaller screen, as you can see, it hits. But let's increase the size a bit, 124 pixels, okay? So we have a bit more space here. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So now take a look what I can do here. I can just simply grab the HTML and just make that font size a bit smaller. I can do 50%. And that's going to take care of everything else. Why? Because we added rem units everywhere. If we had this to pixels, then we would have to go on each element and change them, like H2, font size, 24 pixels, and paragraph, 18 pixels. So that's the reason why we used rems, is because we can easily modify this just by setting the HTML font size to something else. So now take a look. As soon as we hit that point, everything is gonna get a bit smaller. So how simple is that? But there's actually another cool technique that we can use. And the cool technique is called calc. What the hell is calc, Ed? So what you can do is you can actually calculate two values. I'm gonna comment this out for now a bit. So let's do this and this, okay? So this doesn't work anymore. Take a look at this. Rather than putting font size 2.4 rem, what we can do is calculate 2.4 rem plus 0.5 VH, or 1 VW. My apologies, not VH, and hit save. So as you can see, the font gets a bit bigger, but as soon as we start resizing this, this starts getting larger. And if we go down, it starts getting smaller. How this thing basically works is that we have 24 pixels here because we set the rem size to be 1 pixel, 1 rem to be 10 pixels. And what we're doing is we are adding to this. So 24 pixels plus whatever this one viewport width is. So you remember that when we added 100, that took up the whole screen space. Well, if we have a device here that has a viewport width of 360, we can basically divide that by 100, which is going to give us that 1%. So basically here, if we divide this, this would add an additional 3.6 pixels to us. But as soon as we increase the size, well, we might add more. So as soon as we get to an iPad Pro, then you have to divide that and you are going to get 10 pixels by 100, right? So the more you divide, and the bigger the width gets here, the bigger the font also gets, because this will automatically calculate it for you. It's going to add 24 plus, well, let's see, the device size is 1024, so I'm going to split it by 100, okay, by 100 because we have 1.
And that's how it gets increased. So as you can see now, we can keep going and going, and that viewport width is gonna change, and it's gonna keep adding the pixels more and more. And as soon as we get smaller and smaller, it's gonna get smaller. Now you can slow down the process of this, so you can do something like 0.5%, and that's gonna make it less dramatic. So when we start increasing, it's not gonna increase as fast, but it still scales, right? If you wanna do crazy things, you can do 3 here, and then as soon as you start getting bigger, it's gonna scale super fast. So you can do something like 0.5 here, which is gonna be perfectly fine. There we go. So there we go, and you would scale up and everything works perfectly. We can also limit the sizing if we want. So if I switch back to something like 2 here, right, and I want to change this maybe to something like 1.4 rem, hit save, so it looks good on mobile, but I want to scale this up, but I want to limit this. So what we can do is come back with this media, and I can actually add 2 here, all right? And this is gonna look weird a bit, but what we can do is say have a minimum width of 500 pixels and a maximum width of 124. So now this is gonna go all the way to 124 here. See if I increase the size and go up, see it goes more, but I'm gonna keep it at 124. So now what we do is rather than adding it here, we can add it inside here. So actually, let me just copy this over from here to here, actually cut it out and paste it in here. So here, I can just set a normal font size, like 3.6 rem, okay? And now what's gonna happen is it's gonna increase its scale like this, but as soon as it hits this point, as soon as we get out of that max width, it's not gonna grow anymore. So that's pretty cool. We can limit, we can do a lock on top of it. So it stays the same height, but as soon as we get smaller, we are starting to create this fluid motion. All right, so there's a lot of options that you can do here. So obviously we're gonna take a look more at this when we start creating our project. And again, the benefit of having this is that it's still accessible. So we can still change the font size if we want. Settings, medium, very small, it's still gonna be affected. Very large, as you can see. So this still works, which is nice because we're using rems.